And now we're going to move into everything that you want to know about arrival and dismissal. We've only got 30 minutes, so I want to make sure to leave time for questions. So let's go ahead and get started. For the past 60 years, many communities planned and designed schools around cars. When cars are prioritized, biking and walking isn't. Over time, this created a cycle that led to auto-dependent communities, resulting in traffic jams at most schools around the Commonwealth. Because of the current bus driver shortage, congestion may even be worse than it was before the pandemic. But don't worry, safe routes to school can help. Let's pretend that you've contacted your outreach coordinator and expressed interest in doing an arrival and dismissal analysis. I'll be covering what happens during an arrival and dismissal observation, why it's done, and go over some details about an observation that my colleagues conducted at a school in Clarksburg in the Berkshires. But before I continue with Clarksburg, here are some pictures of what an arrival and dismissal observation can accomplish. So before, you can have crazy car lines, congestion. Afterwards, we want walking school buses, improved signage. We want you to describe your current situation and ask if you have a plan, something that you share with families and/or the community around the school. Let me take a moment to explain Clarksburg's concern. The school and library share a parking lot, and traffic flow between the school-generated traffic and library patrons had become an issue. Mornings were fine. The problem was in the afternoon when parents and guardians arrived early and waited in the parking lot for the children during dismissal. My colleagues offered to conduct an arrival and dismissal observation that, at a minimum, would document the problem. The map lays out the circulation pattern. Parents waiting in cars for school to end, marked in red, would block in patrons at the library. There were 2 lanes of parked cars, and they would alternate pulling forward to meet their student. There was issue related more to the outer lane because the parking lot couldn't accommodate the cars that were queued up in one lane. Sometimes the traffic would spill into West Cross Road, which is at the top of the map, an issue because it is one of the main roads in the community. Buses marked in yellow would drive to the back of the parking lot. This was encouraging, as separation of modes is one of our SRTS principles. The only time modes interacted was when all the vehicles would exit the parking lot, which is marked in orange. When this observation was conducted, not many of the students at Clarksburg walked or biked to school, meaning that most of the students were in the middle of this chaos twice a day. Very similar to what Rachel mentioned in her walk audit presentation, in order to get a full picture of what's happening during arrival and dismissal, it's best to have others helping. But the question is, who should be invited? Every community has different stakeholders, but generally we encourage inviting the individuals or representatives from these groups listed here. Just a few comments about this list. At a minimum, include people who actively participate in arrival and dismissal every day. This includes crossing guards and parents who are active in the school community. Consulting parents is particularly valuable as solutions need to be informed by the people they immediately impact. For individuals that can't attend this initial meeting, your outreach coordinator will connect with them to hear about their experiences and opinions. Sometimes we conduct the observation alone, and in some cases, the observation may take more than one visit. One of the advantages of inviting officials from Public Works or Transportation is that recommendations like painting lines or clearing snow may be streamlined, and the police may be able to make public safety recommendations. Listed here are the steps my colleagues created with the team in Clarksburg. The school had a great relationship with their Mass in Motion coordinator and invited them to be part of the observation team to provide an extra level of local knowledge. Additionally, Clarksburg created a student address map and scheduled a snow day just in case. They also discussed how they would share the results of what they'd observed to others in the community. One of the big wins in Clarksburg was that the principal was given the opportunity to present the results to the school committee. So now the day is here. It's time to come and observe. First of all, it's really important that we be safe. Observation day should start with a team meeting at the school before arrival begins. This gives people a chance to ask questions and review what to observe. If counting cars is a task, This should be one person's sole responsibility. Confirm if there are any accommodations needed for observers to include other languages spoken, or if a person isn't able to stand for a long period of time. In Clarksburg, the team met beforehand via Zoom. These pre-meetings allow interested parties that can't attend the observation, like parents and guardians, again, to share their experiences. In addition to designating roles, the outreach coordinator ensures the team members know what to look for. Each school is unique, but we generally observe how the different modes of transportation interact on school property, behaviors of both the staff and crossing guard, as well as students and their parents or guardians, the conditions of the sidewalks, crosswalks, pavement markings, and the streets in general, as well as identified areas of conflict and overall conditions, and how students with mobility-assisted devices navigate on the school property. And we take lots of pictures and write lots of notes. We typically classify our observations by time of day, arrival or dismissal, and mode of transportation. We're going to start with school buses because in many settings, they arrive before other modes of transportation. We note the time they arrive, the number of buses, how they occupy the space. Do the students exit the bus in a safe manner? How do the buses interact with other vehicles, people walking and biking, and do they obstruct the travel lane when they're all in the driveway? In Clarksburg, students who eat breakfast exit the buses while the other students wait inside for a few minutes until the bell rings. During dismissal, we note the time the first bus arrived, while they were they idling? Was the loading of students chaotic or orderly? Did they cause a traffic jam when exiting? Did they leave individually or as a group? In Clarksburg, the buses arrived 15 to 25 minutes before dismissal. Students on buses are dismissed first and by grade level. When we think of buses, we need to include private vans. My colleagues observed a childcare van in the family vehicle queue that did not have its lights on when loading students. As outreach coordinators focused on active transportation, when we approach a school for the first time, we look for clues that give us an idea as to whether students are walking and biking to school. Are there crosswalks? Are they visible? And are the sidewalks in good shape? During the observation, we note when the first student walking arrives on campus. Did they have to cross the street? What was their interaction like with the crossing guard? Did they run in the crosswalk? We note if adults are walking with the students. Are there groups of students walking together as well? We also note the number of students biking to school. This is generally easier to do because they'll all park at the same location. If there is a bike rack, we note the number and the condition. We count the number of students wearing helmets and not, and were families biking together. In Clarksburg, the site lacked both crosswalks and stop signs. We collect the same information during dismissal. The numbers may fluctuate, and that's usually because of parents and guardians' work schedules. A common theme we see related to family vehicles during our observations is cars parked in locations that are marked as no parking. This was an issue in Clarksburg because some drivers parked in spaces that were marked no parking because they blocked views of oncoming traffic. We note the number of vehicles idling. In Clarksburg, the cars line up in two queues at the front parking lot over a 10-minute period. Drivers are then directed one by one to move forward to the front of the school to drop off students. Idling can be worse during dismissal when some parents or guardians arrive early to get a good spot, sometimes up to 30 minutes before the bell rings. We look to see how students exit vehicles. We note the number of students that exit from the driver's side into the travel lane. In Clarksburg, my colleagues noted that students that used the driver's side walked toward the back of the car that they had just exited and in front of the vehicles right behind them, waiting to drop off students. Staff members helped students enter the vehicles staff members helped students enter the vehicles, and even in those situations, not all of them used the passenger side. Sometimes not all drivers follow the leader and park in non-marked spaces like grassy areas or dirt lots near the queue and then cut in front of vehicles in the queue as they're exiting. Drivers are often observed using phones while waiting in line, which is a violation of the Massachusetts hands-free law. What my colleagues saw is not unique to Clarksburg. They saw what most of us see or you experience most mornings or afternoons in your school parking lot or to and from work if you commute near a school. We see a variety of behaviors and actions that both encourage and discourage safety. One thing we want to emphasize is that these observations were expected, and it allowed Safe Routes to School to codify the behavior. The purpose of the report is not to name and shame school staff. Rather, the purpose is to provide school staff a tool that allows them to demonstrate to leadership that an unbiased third party found some ways to improve arrival and dismissal. One important point to mention is that if you plan on having staff members assist with the arrival and dismissal process, and there is a chance that they will be walking in between cars or standing in the middle of the school driveway, we can't emphasize this enough. Be safe and be seen. A simple reflective vest goes a long way, especially when the sun rises late and sets earlier during winter months. It is also another visual cue for drivers to be more aware of their surroundings. If there are any crossing guards near the school, please make sure that they have the proper gear to effectively cross students, such as a reflective vest or jacket and a handheld stop paddle. Check out our crossing guard materials on our website if you want to learn more. Before going further into our example, let's first step back and review what exactly is in an arrival dismissal report. The report reviews all the listed elements on this screen. This report is presented in non-engineering language, so it can be used and understood by all stakeholders. Keep in mind that the principal is the owner of the report and must give permission to others if they want to review it. In addition to including the observations, the report will include recommendations or solutions that may help improve arrival and dismissal at the school. Our recommendations may include both easy to implement solutions like adding temporary signage or moving bike racks, and ones that require more time, human resources, and cost to complete, such as adding Safe Routes to School to your school or district wellness policy. Here are some of the solutions my colleagues provided to Clarksburg. The one we were most excited about was the Bike to School Fridays and establishing some park, walk, and roll locations. You might wonder what that ticketing campaign is all about. We wanted to increase awareness and understanding of the no idling law. We also felt that parents would listen to their students as it was more of a learning moment. So based on our recommendations, the school chose to launch a Bike to School Day on Fridays, modify student handbook to allow biking and walking to school, and they updated their policy to include Safe Routes to School and park, walk, and roll locations. Although there are school-specific recommendations in our reports, there are common recommendations we provide to help supplement our 6 E's framework. You may remember that Rachel made reference to the 6 E's. Due to time, I'd like to just highlight 2 of the E's, education and equity. To meet the needs of our diverse partner schools, we offer pedestrian and bike safety training in a variety of formats. In the classroom, on bike, with mentors as assemblies, and videos for PE teachers. We also recommend visiting our equity page on the website to learn more about including students of all abilities into your SRTS events and requesting materials in multiple languages. Now that I've reviewed the arrival and dismissal observation process, I want to talk about the importance of having a plan and what to include in it. Most schools already have a plan. We want to emphasize the importance of documenting that plan and sharing it with families and the community. And if you haven't created one, don't worry, we're here to help. But before I share what goes into a plan, I want to review what we mean when we talk about separating modes of transportation. The example you see here is of an ideal street where all the modes of transportation are not only included, but separated from each other. Just like cars, buses, bikes, and people walking or rolling all have their place on a municipal street, we strive to have the same separation on school property to ensure safe arrival and dismissal. Removing the possibility of conflicts between modes can improve safety. Many of the schools already separate buses, but we want to encourage doing the same to separate from to separate cars from people walking, biking, and rolling. The use of cones, sandwich boards, chains, etc. on school grounds can help separate the different modes of transportation, but they can also help effectively communicate the procedures. For example, if there is a sandwich board that says, please pull up, drivers are more likely to do so. If another sandwich board says buses only, drivers are less likely to go through that lane. These temporary structures are not foolproof, but they do help. Cones, chains, and other materials can also be used to block lanes and prevent premature queuing without having to assign someone to be directing traffic at all times. Pedestrian crosswalk signs like the one pictured on the right can help reinforce the need to yield to people using the crosswalk. If flashing signs can't be installed, this sign serves as a visual cue to drivers that people will be crossing the street at some point. If you're interested in more tips on how temporary improvements can help during arrival and dismissal, check out our pop-up guide on the SRTS website. If you want to encourage more walking and biking to school, the best way to do is to give those students the grand entrance. This makes their trip shorter and more convenient, but it also demonstrates that the school encourages and values active transportation over single-family vehicles. We want to put family vehicles at the bottom of the priority list since they contribute the most to school traffic, congestion, and harm to the environment. This also ties back to the order of the procedures. We prioritize walking, biking, and rolling because they are the most sustainable ways for people to travel. If we allow students walking, biking, and rolling to enter through the front and require students in family vehicles to use a side or back entrance, not only are we prioritizing the preferred modes, but we're making the students feel safer by separating them from other modes. Another factor to consider is the staggering of dismissal times to help alleviate congestion. At the start of the school day, most campuses have about a 15 to 20 minute arrival window. At dismissal, parents and guardians tend to arrive at the same time because they want to be the first to leave. Our recommendation is to dismiss students walking and biking first to give them a head start before vehicles enter and exit the campus. Bus riders can be loading while the walkers and bikers are leaving. After the buses depart, the family vehicles can then leave. By ordering who is released during dismissal, our schools can reduce conflicts between modes. The image that you see on the right is from Holliston. They dismiss their walkers and bikers before any other mode of transportation leaves the school grounds. Staff members escort students to a grassy area where they meet up with their parents and guardians. By improving the pedestrian and biking experience, you can encourage more active transportation to and from school. Just like bus and car drivers know where to enter and exit the school property, people walking also need to have a clear path of travel. Drivers expect people to be using the crosswalk, and it should be clearly marked. Maintaining predictability and separating modes should reduce safety concerns. As I mentioned during my quick tips right before this presentation, if you want to encourage biking to school, you need to provide bike racks. Students and their parents will feel better about bringing their bikes to schools and leaving them outside. And placement and condition of the bike racks matters. The racks with the most bikes are close to the school's front entrance, easy to get your bike in and out of. It's an added bonus if they're covered and secured. Now for a quick reminder, the law in Massachusetts requires anyone under the age of 16 to wear a helmet while riding and rolling like a scooter or a skateboard. We get asked the question about where to store helmets. That's really something up for the school or the district to determine based on their individual circumstances. Now we're going to address some bus solutions. We typically discourage double rows of buses because that means students have to walk between them. Since the door is on the right side of the bus, we recommend having a circulation plan that allows buses to have the students exit directly to the sidewalk. When students are exiting, the bus should have its lights flashing and the stop paddle out like the one you see in the photo. Lastly, here are some vehicle solutions. To prevent a backup, we recommend that parents and guardians stay in the car and that students secure their own seatbelts. Please take a moment to review these tips and also check out our Start the School Day with Confidence backpack flyer that talks all about arrival and dismissal safety. Having a written arrival and dismissal procedure that can be easily accessed not only helps to communicate expectations to families, bus drivers, crossing guards, and staff members, but it also holds all parties accountable. Procedures provide consistency when it comes to traffic safety. We understand that procedures will differ from school to school due to location and campus size, infrastructure, demographics, etc., but the overall template of the procedure should remain the same throughout a district to tie back in with a consistency factor. It's important that the plans be communicated with families. In addition to publishing the plans in the student handbooks, we recommend they be included in communications at the beginning of the school year, after winter break, and placed under the About Us General Info tab on the school's website, and share the plan with crossing guards and the police. We also want these procedures to be equitable, so if it's possible, we recommend publishing the procedures in multiple languages. A complete arrival and dismissal plan includes school hours and circulation map that illustrates all the modes and accompanying text describing the procedures for each mode. Also, there are some key phrases we need to use. Drop off and pickup are very car-centric terms. We want to use language like arrival and dismissal, especially on the title, because these terms are more inclusive to all modes of transportation, including walkers and bikers. We want to save the drop-off and pickup terms for the family vehicle section of the plan. In summary, we are here to help. The goal of a report is not only to document ways to improve safety, but also a way to encourage safe and sustainable travel to and from school. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, and this is not a one-size-fits-all program. Every school has different needs, and we will make sure the report addresses those specific pain points. Regardless of the various challenges a school faces, it is important for the school to have an arrival and dismissal plan. The documents related to arrival and dismissal are under evaluation on the website. Any questions?